Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Soul Cresta, a long dormant franchise given new life. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From publisher Platinum Games, Soul Cresta released to the Nintendo Switch, the PlayStations, and PC via Steam in February of 2022. This title is the successor to the Moon Cresta Terra Cresta franchise from Nichibutsu that last saw release in 1997, so it's been quite a while. And this is the first title in Platinum Games' new Neoclassic arcade series. So this is definitely a departure from what Platinum usually develops, but I feel like they've hit this one out of the park. It's a wonderful vertical scrolling shoot 'em up that has the elements of the previous Cresta franchises wonderfully represented on a modern platform. So this one is a title that I highly recommend, but there are a few caveats, and I'll get to those in just a little bit. So finding ourselves at the main menu, there are a couple of things that we should look at first. So initially when you fire the game up, you'll just have mission, special, and option. Under option, I do want to point out that there's this manual that I highly recommend you check first. This manual itself is presented in this wonderful old-style arcade presentation, and it's got all the various systems kind of laid out across these 3 pages. Definitely well worth reading, and information that I hope I do a good job of conveying to you throughout the course of this look at. In addition to that, you can also alter some display and gameplay settings, although one thing to keep in mind, although this title is a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up, it does not have a Tate mode. So under special, initially all that will be here is just the achievements. This is important to note though, as the achievements play a more integral role than just saying you've gotten something done. As you complete achievements, you'll unlock additional modes in the game, including the ones that are under the challenge mode, things like caravan, high score. So that's a very important mission, or rather option to be looking at, as you have to go to that particular screen to unlock those modes, so keep that in mind. So under mission mode, though, is where the main meat of the game is. And here we have 2 different modes if you've bought the DLC. And that's the main caveat I have about this game. So there's the arcade mode, this is the base experience. But there's also the dramatic mode. This is basically your story mode, which adds a story to the arcade mode experience, basically. It does change some things up, but it's largely the same. And I feel that both of these should have been included in the base game, not having the dramatic mode as a DLC as part of the dramatic edition. And so really, if you're not interested in the story, if you're just here for the gameplay, just buy the base title. Don't worry about the dramatic mode, because all it is the story mode and the database. That aside, starting arcade mode, we're taken to the stage select screen. You can start the game on any stage you've previously reached. And then once you select your stage, you have your difficulty. You've got 3 difficulties unlocked initially, and then the other ones will be unlocked by completing all the other stages on the highest difficulty you have available. So I have not done that yet, so I don't have hard available. But for the purpose of today's video, we'll play on very easy, so we have a very easy time of talking about the game. So as I noted, this game does not have a Tate mode, and that's because the presentation requires that there's a lot of information on the left and the right side of the screens in those sidebars. As you can see here, there's actually quite a bit going on there, and I'll do my best to explain things as we go. So that's our base blowing up, and initially we launch with this red ship. This is Unit 1, Amaterasu, one part of the docking ship Yamato. So we just combined with our other 2 portions of the ship. The blue ship is Unit 2, Tsukiyomi, and the yellow ship is Unit 3, Susanoo. Those are basically figures from Japanese myth, so it's a little bit of an interesting bit to look into those characters and what they represent. as it's one of the neat portions of the game itself. So those ships were like summoned by collecting those winged figures. If you don't happen to have all three ships, then like those wing icons will be one of the three colors that you're missing. So if you've got like two ships and you're missing the blue ship, then it'll be blue. If you've got like you're missing the red, it'll be red, etc. But once you have all three ships, those wing icons have an S. Those are shields, basically protecting you from one shot or one collision with an enemy, not necessarily with the background object, as that will deal fatal damage. So keep that in mind. It is possible to lose lives very quickly on some stages because you'll be colliding with obstacles throughout the course of your gameplay. So in addition to those winged icons, we're also getting these coins that enemies are dropping. Those are very important. Those soul medals fill up our soul meter, or rather soul gauge, on the right side of the screen. As you can see there, that soul meter indicates, or soul gauge indicates all these different bonuses that we achieve as we fill those up. And there's certain ways to get even more of those coins, which is important, as the further you can fill up that gauge, the more access you'll have to better things. So the whole Yamato, like three ships docking thing, is core to the gameplay itself. The gameplay itself is actually relatively straightforward, as we just have two buttons. There's a shot button, and you do have an option for a rapid, which is nice. And there's the dock button. So when you press the dock button, it undocks your ship. Press it back again, it pulls the ships back together. The thing that's interesting about that is, depending on the order of the ships, so we can like change which ship is at the front. Suddenly we're firing a different shot. Where we were firing a tri-laser, now with the yellow ship in the front, we're firing this awesome drill. And if we were to swap the blue ship to the front, then we're firing this electric homing missile. In addition, the position of the other two ships is actually very crucial. The ship in the middle represents your charge shot. So right now we've got the yellow ship in the middle. If we were to charge that one up, then we get this powerful drill that we can use to attack enemies, cancel out some enemy shots, that sort of thing. If the red ship is in the middle, it's a powerful red laser, and if the blue ship's in the middle, then it's a full burst of homing missiles. In addition to that, depending on which ship you have in the front, it could be crucial for various defeating various enemies, getting past certain obstacles, or unlocking certain like chests and point values around the game itself. So throughout the course of the gameplay, we've been collecting these formation chips, which you can see there on like the left side of the screen. So let's talk about what we have on the left side of the screen, as we've already covered the soul gauge on the right. So on the top of the left, you have those circles with bars. That's our SP gauge, and the SP gauge there is used for a couple things. So it's primarily used for our charge shots. So if you happen to hold down the shot button, then you can release a charge shot, which, as I mentioned before, is determined by the ship in the middle of your formation. So right now our blue ship is in the middle of formation, and that's why our charge shot, we're getting this nice homing missile barrage. That uses up one bar, so basically a third of a circle of SP. So below that, we have all those hexagonal chips with like 3 circle formations. So those are our formation shots. So say like the horizontal one, if we line up the 3 ships in horizontal, hold down the docking button, we're suddenly in this particular formation, and we're firing a special type of shot. That only lasts for a certain amount of time. You can cancel out of it a little bit early, and if you cancel out of it early enough, you will get a little bit of a refund, as it were, on your point value. There are 5 ships to unlock. The first like 5 there you see, and then the red one is a special formation. So if we can get ourselves into that formation, well, I'll go with the reverse like triangle, so you can kind of just see what we can do. You can still take damage in this particular like mode, so keep that in mind. It's would be your lead ship of the formation that would take the damage. So be careful about that. And in addition to that, you want to make sure you do have the SP to activate those. If you try to go into formation without the SP, it will just fail, and you might be left wondering why. There's also a little timer there at the bottom of the screen, basically indicating how long we have to pull off the particular mode or move ourselves around. Formation-wise, it resets back to 30 seconds or 10 seconds, depending on which difficulty you happen to be on. Let's go ahead and use this particular like sweeping beam. So some of the modes are like significantly, or some of the formation shots are significantly better for some enemies than others. So best like play around, see what you like as far as abilities, ones that you can easily get to, and ones that like can do damage. So we find ourselves at the final portion of the final boss, this like ship that we've been fighting. And as you might have noted, stage 1 actually has some decent length to it. I'm just tanking the shots here ridiculously. Let's see if we can get this guy knocked out a little more efficiently. So all our shields are exhausted. The shields are represented by these circles up here. If there are S's in there, that's how you know you have shields. With them all out, then, well, we're out of shields. If we take in additional shots at that point, we would start losing fighters from the back of our formation forward. If you have fewer than 3 ships, you can still activate the formation mode. There are 2 ship formations, and then if you have only just the 1 ship, it's still possible to use SP, but it's just for spinning invulnerability attack. That doesn't really do damage, it's more of just an evasion. So there's still one last portion at the end of the stage there. We have to destroy the energy collector of the Megazophar forces that we're fighting against. And that will complete the stage itself. At this point, we could exit back to the title screen and go select a stage individually. But if we don't, it just continues the gameplay through in a normal progression sense. And that basically is Sol Cresta at its core. So the title itself is definitely fascinating to see. I'm kind of curious as to how this particular title was chosen for Platinum Games' Neo-Classic Arcade franchise. As, well, the title itself was announced on April 1st, 2020. It was Platinum Games' April Fool's joke for that year, but the interesting thing is it wasn't actually an April Fool's joke. It was a real product, and they even had a ridiculous tagline, 36 years in the making, as the initial release date for the title was planned in 2021, which would have been whopping 36 years after Terra Cresta came out. But Terra Cresta wasn't the last series in the franchise to release. We actually saw Terra Cresta 3D, which is the third Terra Cresta game, come out in 1997 for the Sega Saturn. So with its actual release date and taking that into account, it's 25 years in the making. Splitting hairs, but definitely something that's just like fun to point out. And what are my overall thoughts on this title? Well, to be honest, I really love what Platinum Games has put together here. It's a super solid vertical scrolling shoot 'em up with some really fun and neat systems. Some I haven't even touched on. So one thing that we're gaining as we're filling up that soul gauge, there's this neat little feature called the command shot. You've got all these awesome wrong button. You've got these awesome fighting game like commands that we can input to get us some special kind of shots, and those shots do not utilize the gauge on our SP gauge. So the first one we unlock is the machine gun, where if you press down and forward in the shot button, you'll fire a extra barrage of shots that deal a fair bit of damage forward, and more importantly, behind your ship as well. The next one we get is a quarter circle, left or right, will fire a side barrage, making it very effective against taking out enemies that sometimes are bosses in particular that position themselves in awkward positions. And the last command shot we have is a burst. That burst is full circle at 360 and the attack button, and it just like fires out a burst of missiles or drills or lasers, depending on which ship happens to be your primary shot at the enemy. So let's go ahead and swap things up. We'll go back to, actually no, let's go red ship in the middle. So this is one problem with the game. Sometimes it's difficult to position things the way you want. I want to use the red ship in the middle, as that allows it to fire this massive beam, which deals a fair bit of damage. I know the boss was already dead at that point, but like, why would you not want to go and use something awesome like that? Another neat little like thing about those soul coins that we can get from the enemies as we destroy them. It's easier to tell on the gold ones than the silver, but on one side they've got the wing symbol of the whole like Soul Cresta organization that we belong to, but on the other side it's the owl logo that was Nichibutsu's logo. A really neat little tip of the hat to the original developer of the Cresta franchise, and something that I'd like really appreciate seeing Platinum Games toss into the game itself. So there you have it. That's Soul Cresta served up for your enjoyment. So let's talk a little bit about the minus flavors. The biggest one for me is I don't like the fact that the truly excellent story DLC was gate locked as, or rather, a truly excellent story mode was gate locked as DLC. That's the one biggest hang-up I have with the title, is that they just made one of the more interesting sections of the game extra paid content. The story really should have been part of the base release itself, as I feel it adds so much to the game itself. Then my other minus flavor, something to go and note, is it's actually can be quite difficult to well, the formation shots are one thing. It's kind of tricky to get yourself into the right position, but especially in the heat of battle, when you're trying to rearrange your ships to put a different one in the front, a different one in the middle, a different one in the back, it's really tricky, and it would have been nice to have a more simplified method to do so. Rather than like breaking things up and then trying to position them. Okay, is the yellow one in the front? Yes, no, maybe. I would have really appreciated the ability to just like bind swapping shots to say like the shoulder buttons or something like that. So they're not really like used unless you choose to bind those like buttons yourself. Well, that's not true. I think like right bump is set to like rapid, and right trigger is set to shot, kind of allowing you to use a little bit of a trigger setup with the controller. But I would have really appreciated having the ability to put in like a swap to all that as well. But on the plus flavor side of things, so the style of this game itself, I feel, is just awesome. They kind of picked around a 32-bit era for the look of the game, and really they nailed it. It definitely has that great period piece like feel. The pixel graphics are like really well done. There's like some hand-drawn art for the character portraits in the dramatic mode, which I feel are very period for what they're kind of going for. You've got like these like mid to early 80s like character designs like present there, and the whole thing style-wise is excellent, and definitely one of the reasons I can recommend this title. In addition to that, the gameplay, they've truly mastered something that is just like fun to play. Save for the difficulty in swapping around the ship itself, the core gameplay itself is a lot of fun. The story mode itself, setting aside my complaints about it not being included in the game, actually added a lot to my enjoyment when I played through it. I played through the title initially on the arcade mode, and then I went back and played it with the dramatic mode, as I did pick up both the base game and the DLC in the bundle, which doesn't save you any money. It just has the two together, making it easier to purchase. And it filled in a lot of the blanks of what was going on in the gameplay story itself. Something I really appreciated and I thought was pretty neat, well done. But it's an extra cost, and without that, some of the things that go on, the reoccurring boss that we encounter in several stages, you don't really know much of let's see what's going on there. The finals, some of the segments towards the end of the game, just don't make as much sense. You can kind of infer some stuff, but you're missing a lot of the context, and that's disappointing that that's just simply not there. As I really feel the story is a lot of the reason to play and enjoy this game. It's not necessary, not by any means, but it's fun. And then lastly, I talked a little bit about it with the whole style, but just nailing it with the whole docking system, then just creating a fun, unique system of gameplay where we have all these different formations and docking options, and really this game is just truly an excellent shoot 'em up. A little bit on the high price side of things, so maybe if you're not looking to play it right away, waiting for a sale, I could totally understand that. So I think that's a great way to go. But it is one that I recommend at the end of the day. And with that wraps up this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us this week. I really hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we'll catch you next time.